started. We're right on 2:30. So Fiona is my colleague sitting here in the front, we will tag team throughout this. We're here to talk to you about one of Te Papa's recent acquisitions, which involved digital objects and was in many ways new territory for the museum. So I am a curator in the Mātauranga Māori team. Fiona, as you can see, is Collections Information System Manager. So like I said, we'll tag team. I'm going to talk about the why of the acquisition and then hand over to Fiona to talk about the how. Fiona will do most of the slides so that we don't double handle all of the beautiful images that we're going to share with you today. So to go back a little bit, this acquisition started, as most great art does, as a conversation between friends. In late 2016, I got word from the Aho Collective, who are an artist collective of 4 Māori women, that they had been selected for Documenta 14, and they would like to undertake some research in the Taonga Māori collection here at Te Papa. As a bit of background, Documenta is one of the world's preeminent art exhibitions, and this was the first time ever that New Zealand artists had been selected for the exhibition, all of whom were Māori, and Aho were the only women. So as a curator, I was able to facilitate access to the collection and assist in some research surrounding some of the kaupapa they were interested in, which included traditional sewing techniques, material, and taniwha. So alongside the physical making of their work, Aho began to collect stories from their friends and family, personal recollections or reflections on their relationships with taniwha. And the depth and breadth of these stories contributed not only to their thinking around the artwork that they were commissioned to make, but also to a website that they decided to create alongside the physical work called Taniwha Tales. So this website was one of the many ways that Aho were able to bring their whānau and their friends along with them to this exhibition that took place on the other side of the world, in Germany, in a place called Kassel. And also to acknowledge that the Mātauranga, so the knowledge that was inherent in their work, wasn't just theirs. It was part of a greater whole. And it, like I said, it was fed by multiple people. So in sharing these stories, which can be said for the sharing much of the content that is considered tapu or for particular eyes only, they anonymised each contributor, providing only their initials, iwi affiliations, and age. The design of its site itself is very simple. There are blue tiles that are reminiscent of both water, but also the scales of our taniwha. So the third object that made up this acquisition was their Instagram account. I am actually just going to use a couple of the images. So here we are, their Instagram account. So during the course of the making of their work, Kiko Moana, the physical work, which is made out of blue tarpaulin, they shared images and videos from their creating process. They included pictures of tarpaulin in the wild, as they said, the wilds of their families' homes or their immediate surrounds. They shared taniwha or moana-related imagery. So here is a hangi being uncovered at a whānau celebration, and just some snapshots of the work when it was on display in Kassel. They also, in reflecting on their kind of idiosyncratic approach to their work, which is quite humorous and light-hearted, they also came up with hashtags to make their work more discoverable, things like hashtag Tāpi Tales and hashtag Tarps at Work and things like that. So I'm going to hand over to Fiona in a little while to talk about the hows of this acquisition, but I really want to get across that it's so important that we not understate how important these digital objects were to understanding Kiko Moana, the physical work, and Mataaho's wider practice. So this idiosyncrasy of their work is part of it, but also that they use these platforms to help portray their humour and their approach to work, but most importantly, it is the digital components that speak to their inclusive practice, that they include the perspectives of their friends and whānau, that they share their progress with others, that they are able to connect digitally in a way that they are unable to do physically. So the 4 members that make up Mata Aho all live in different areas, so digital is a really important aspect for them, a really important connector for them and a sharer for them. Their Instagram account I saw as being akin to an artist archive, many of which end up in collecting institutions like Te Papa or the National Library. The slight difference being, of course, that it's public, and it publicly documents their process of research and making, and some of the content also verges on crowdsource, so friends of theirs started sending in images of tarp and images of taniwha-related murals, which they would then share with others as well. And to get all kind of like conceptual about this, I've referred to their Instagram in the past as a palimpsest of whakapapa. So they use it to compound the physical layers that make up kiko moana, but including these conceptual layers, these layers of Mātauranga, in a way that complement one another. The ephemeral nature of Instagram or these other social media platforms can also be seen as quite consumerist or lacking in value because it's so easy to produce en masse these things which we can then just delete at whim as well. But it was really important as a curator that I recognised and then argued to the institution that actually everything they're doing on their Instagram account is loaded with meaning and is very valuable to them personally. And so when collecting something physical, if there is something digital that reinforces what they're creating, we should collect that as well. So yeah, like I said, I refer to social media as ephemeral, and I mean this in the sense that it can be taken down very easily, or it falls down the profile as new things are added. As Instagram, to come across their stuff, you have to go to their account and then scroll down the page. So finally, these 3 objects, the physical work, the website, the Instagram account, will each be managed by the Mātauranga Māori team. So this means that if anyone requests things for loan or wants access to our copies of their digital objects, they will need to come through a process that we mediate, our team will mediate. As Fiona will get into, the act of actually collecting these digital objects raised quite a lot of questions internally, which at times they were a bit frustrating because you're trying to argue to someone the value of something digital, and oftentimes they're not users themselves or they don't understand how social media works. But at the end of the day, it just made my arguing much better, made me a much better arguer. So it was really imperative that I was questioned around the importance of collecting digital from many different angles, because then, as I said, my argument in return got a lot better. But also, in an institution like this, I'm arguing for the collection of objects which will be kept in perpetuity, and a lifetime of storage comes with a lifetime of cost. So we need to make sure that we're collecting with meaning. On the flip side to that, think about the way in which an acquisition like this can prompt thinking about how or what to collect, to think broadly about the collecting of objects, to think about what else there is that we could collect digitally that fills out the story of a physical object is something that we should be doing each time we think about collecting something. To my mind, they're valuable and they deserve to be kept. I'm going to hand over to Fiona now to tell you how to actually do it.
Thanks, Matariki. So for me, the critical first step for this acquisition was to clearly understand what was being proposed for acquisition, the reason for each item to be collected, and also some ideas of future intended use. And so these were really critical for me to help understand what digital objects needed to be collected and also what tools we needed to use to do this. So first, looking at the Instagram site, as Matariki says, it was a really important part of the development of the physical artwork, where the artists were documenting the development process of the work, sharing things with friends and family, hashtag taniwha sinew, and also to share the installation of the work at Documenta in Castle. So it was really clear that the social nature of Instagram was important to encourage the conversation and the sharing of images and ideas. And it also shows, like Matariki said, how Instagram acted as like a visual scrapbook for the collective, for ideas around the conceptual development and the production of the artwork. So in conversation with the collective, we determined that Te Papa would not be able to display the images separate to the Instagram account, that the images were only to be collected in connection with the Instagram account and all of the comments and hashtags and all the rest of it. So we decided that the Instagram account could be recorded and that this collection item would then live on within our collections. And so this would mean that we would set a level of access that would enable researchers and staff to access this digital content when required to get a broader understanding of the development of the artwork. So onto the second digital element in this acquisition, the website. So Taniwha Tales is a collection of transcribed narratives about Taniwha. So initially the request I received for this was for Te Papa to collect the website. So it was really important to clarify, what does that mean to collect a website? What is it that's important about this website? And why does Te Papa want to collect it? So again, in conversation with the artists, we came to the agreement that it was the narratives themselves that were the important aspect that Te Papa wished to acquire. So we didn't want to take over ownership of the URL, we didn't want to take ownership of the site itself, we did want that to remain with the collective. But what we did want was the option to display it in some form in the future, alongside the sculptural part of the artwork, even if in future the website no longer exists. So while it wasn't feasible for us to take over hosting or ownership of the website, we could certainly collect a digital object that will allow us to use it for research or exhibition in future. So in the end, we've decided on a couple of different ways of retaining this information. So we've suggested to the collective that they request for the site to be harvested by the National Library's New Zealand Web Archive. I've also created a simple text file which records the text that appears on each page of the website. And the third is that Te Papa will collect a recording of the website that can be presented alongside the sculpture or can be used to reconstruct Taniwha Tales in future if required. So far I've talked about recording for both the website and the Instagram. So to do this, I decided to use a tool called Web Recorder. So Web Recorder is created by Rhizome, which is a US-based non-profit that's interested in digital art and culture and also in digital preservation. It's a really simple to use tool that creates a recording of a website that can be viewed and interacted with, even if the original website has changed or no longer exists. The tool captures data in a format which includes HTML, images, scripts, style sheets, Flash, Java, video, audio, and so on. So the web archive file format that's created, it's a modified version of the format used for web crawls, and it is recommended as a file format by the Library of Congress as a preferred preservation file format. So for the website and the Instagram account, I created a recording of each, which we've saved in our user account on Web Recorder, and have also downloaded a copy of the file which lives in our collection information system. And this file can be played independently of the Web Recorder website using a Web Recorder player. So here's a screenshot showing you the Instagram and the website as a recording. So the recording that's created is not like a video file that you simply play. It essentially appears just like the website, and a user can choose to click on and view any part of this website that has been recorded. So with this Aho Collective acquisition, by recording the website and Instagram account, we end up with digital collection items that can be interacted with in the same way as it appeared on the original website, even if that original website no longer exists. So, in conclusion, when thinking through the process of acquiring these digital collection items, I realised that it's highlighted 3 important things for me around this area of collecting that I'll share with you now. So first, it's really important to carefully consider what it is that you want to collect and why you want to collect it, which will inform the choice of tools you use to do this. Obviously, this is true with any type of collection item, but in some ways it's more important with digital items, as they may take different forms as an object that could be collected. So during the acquisition process, it's really important to talk with colleagues, talk with the donors or creators to get a clear sense of what it is that you need to collect and how it may be used now and in the future. So second, think about the expertise you have on staff to manage this type of acquisition. In this case, Web Recorder was a really useful tool as it was really easy to use without specific programming knowledge, and it created a stable archival file that hopefully should be usable into the future. We received advice from Te Papa's rights manager to identify any rights issues for the acquisition, which we were able to manage and resolve as part of the acquisition process. And as Matariki said, her relationship with the collective was really important during this process, as there were a lot of questions during the acquisition process that we had to go through to make sure that we had all of the right information and that what we were doing was acceptable for Aho Collective. And the final item is that it's really important to think about the precedent that an acquisition will set. So in this case, collecting these items was breaking some new ground for Te Papa. We hadn't previously collected a recording of a social media account, so it was really important for us to set a good precedent that can be referred to in future for other acquisitions. So that sums up my part of this presentation, but I am really interested to hear any questions that you might have, and would be interested to hear either now or during the conference if you have managed a similar type of acquisition yourself, collected social media, used Web Recorder or other tools for similar acquisitions. I'd be really interested to hear how others are working in this space as well. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? Oh, yeah, there's a few.
That was a handout. You're over there, so it's very nice.
Did you have any rights or ethical discussions around capturing the comments from people outside of the collective?
It was the same question.
Oh, okay. Well, that's handy, isn't it? Yeah, I just thought about that as I saw the recording and it showed the login screen. So the approach we took, and I'm not saying it's the best approach or the right approach or this will remain the approach forever, is that we recorded from without being, did we record from being logged in as Te Papa?
I didn't in the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Fiona should answer the question.
So we ended up recording not being logged in to Instagram, but in talking with Victoria Leachman, who's the rights manager here at Te Papa, we determined that because of how this recording would be used, it is used by staff and by researchers for background research. It's not something that will be displayed publicly, and in talking with Victoria, she determined that that was a suitable use and it's something that we didn't need to seek rights clearance for. So,
on that note, I just want to say if anyone was at the Ethical Web Archiving Workshop on Friday, just gone, we did have conversations about this kind of thing and talked about how because we actually have another more complex digital acquisition which is in the works at the moment and which will require stringent anonymizing, but we're also using the same tool. So the Web Recorder tool makes it a bit difficult to anonymize as a video, but then I happened to have a conversation with someone who works there and he said that that is the kind of feedback they need because they are constantly evolving the product themselves, and why not be informed by the users of the product? Yeah. So that will likely not always be the approach, but it's what we've done now with the mind that we will continue to improve. Oh.
We're just figuring out which questions we're going to ask first.
Okay.
Thank you both for this presentation. It was really awesome. I'm just wondering, so you said that the Instagram wouldn't ever be exhibited. Do you think that would ever change in the future? Do you want to tackle that?
Well, maybe I'll make a quick comment. To me, it seems like a question that would need to be put to the collective.
It's also, so the recording that we have is for a certain period of time. So our intention was to collect for the duration of Documenta, but acquisitions take a really long time to get through the process. So they'd actually stopped adding for quite a long period, but then they started on a new project. But by that time, we, as the recorders, can't actually ignore one of the tiles. So one of the tiles, the most recent one in the recording, isn't actually related to the artwork. And we're also not adding to the recording. So we've got this kind of anomaly, but it won't be, we won't do a recording in the future unless we collect something differently.
My comment is just thank you, really. I think this is a really quite important intervention into the collecting of the web in New Zealand. I think from the National Library perspective where I work, we take a certain view of it, but it's not a complete enterprise that we engage in. And I've wanted for some time, in fact it was about 8 years ago, I talked about this at an NDF about building capability across New Zealand to help collect web-based heritage, and I'm really pleased that you guys have sort of taken these steps into this space, and I think this case study and whatever else you're doing will be really, really important for others across New Zealand and cultural heritage institutions to learn from. So kia ora, thank you.
Great.
Maybe if I can comment back to your comment, and just say, I think what was really interesting for me approaching this acquisition was the idea of, particularly the Instagram. I think when you consider this type of object, it was really interesting to almost strip away the feeling of it being a scary digital thing, and the moment that you realise that it is a scrapbook or a collection and connection device, I think that makes it much clearer as to its significance and why it should be collected. Yeah, and I think, like I said during the presentation, just having that conversation and also being able to go to the collective with questions about it was really helpful.
I just wanted to note something, because we didn't actually answer your question, Jess, is that the Instagram's still live, so if we were to exhibit alongside, there is the potential to actually just have the live website. And then the reason why I started talking about what we actually recorded is because there is more content there than there is in our recording, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And that ties nicely into what I was going to ask. I love that comment, the line you said at the start about if it's something physical, but it's backed by something digital, collect that as well. Mm-hmm. Is there a limit to how much you go with the digital collecting, as to how far you go or what you collect?
There's limitations internally in terms of capacity. So we don't have digital, say, collection managers or curators. So it falls on someone who is in a role who is able to do this, someone like Fiona. But it's not actually her role, is it?
Well, it's part of what I do, but yeah, we don't have a whole team of people working on this, so I guess it's something that we, it's interesting to get this type of acquisition because it helps us to challenge that and for us to learn with each acquisition, but also for us to demonstrate that this is only going to continue to increase and grow over time as we continue to collect more in this area.
I should also note that the process for driving acquisitions is driven curatorially at Te Papa. So if there is so it's driven by curators. So if there's no one in the curatorial team who is interested in this kind of collecting, then it could easily stop as well.
But would the collective ask you to continue? I mean, is this a co-collecting project or is this a curatorial project?
For this is one discrete project, yeah. So if there was a collection of something else in the future, that would be something separate. But for this, it was the website, the Instagram for that period of time, and the physical work.
So if the collective came back to you and said, our artwork is continuing its journey around the world, we want you to document that continuing journey, would that be a whole new acquisition?
I'm not sure. Cross that bridge when I come to it. Sorry, what a cop-out.
I've got a question. Have you butted your heads up against the collection of any non-web-based digital components of digital artworks, and what strategies would you look to put around that? I'm thinking specifically of like editioned digital works.
Can you repeat the question, please?
So have you been like, I'm trying to separate out like collecting web from collecting digital artwork, and talking about digital artwork which is not represented on the web. Have you been butting your heads up against the collection of any digital artwork or digital components of digital artwork which are not web-based?
Yes.
What does that look like?
Maybe that's a conversation we could have. It could be a long conversation. Yeah, so thank you, audience member, for suggesting what I should talk about. But so one example is a digital artwork. I think it dates from the early 2000s by an artist collective. The file format is an executable Flash file. And if you know anything about Flash files, they are quickly becoming obsolete. And so we need to look at migration or going back to the artist and seeing if they have a different output file. That's challenging for us at the moment because we don't have a dedicated, even one staff member looking at that kind of area to do an inventory of our digital collection items and finding those items that need to be migrated. So yes, for sure. Tomorrow there's a panel discussion on digital collecting. You might want to come. So I'm sure it will be discussed in more detail.
Great, we're already past time. We have one more question.
Oh, Ali? Yes, sure.
I won't make mine a question, so that makes it easy. You don't have to answer it. It's better. But I think I know this is just about one particular work that went to Castle, but there was another New Zealand artist at Castle. So you didn't do anything around Nathan's work.
Two others,
yeah. But it really raises the question of, is the National Art Gallery considering aggressively collecting New Zealand artists' social media activity? Oh, so it was a question.
I would say no. I mean, this is very new collecting, and as I said earlier, I mean, it's all curatorially driven. So the reason why I collected this artwork is because I had the relationship and I facilitated the access to our collection. But, oh gosh, how to say this without...
I think the idea of collecting a wider volume of New Zealand artists' social media would be a huge undertaking, and in this case it was a relatively easy project because it was very well defined and well confined in terms of duration, and it was easy to put a box around it. It was for a particular artwork, so in that case it was well considered and achievable for us.
And in this instance as well, the Instagram began with their commission. So it was very easy and packageable in this instance. Can't speak for others, I'm afraid. I think that's us.
Yes, it's now morning tea time. Thank you all.
Afternoon.
Thank you all very much for being such a great audience.
Great. Thank you, everyone.